I'm doing great. Everything's been really good. Since having that, I don't know, I guess breakthrough, being released from that grip of the Jezebel spirit. I'm going to talk more about the mold today in Leviticus 14, because I think that there's a lot in there to do with our last live and that girl that had showed up and wanted to talk. I'm just going to wait a couple minutes, see if Granny and Caitlin get on here. Hello to everyone who's in here. We've been talking about abuse and healing using a book, which has led to a lot of my personal life of abuse and healing. And God's taken me through a lot of healing on live. And I was recently released from this person in my life has the Jezebel spirits, narcissism in the world. And I was released recently from the grip of that spirit. Therefore, like, the holidays for me usually are kind of torturous, because I sit and dwell and feel guilty about enjoying myself when the narcissist in their household is not enjoying themselves. Kind of like, I shouldn't be either, is how my mentality's been most of my life, holding myself back. And this year, during the holidays, I experienced the holiday. I was happy. I was able to enjoy it with my family that was here, my friends, and it was just a much different situation for me this year. So it was good. Did I miss, did Granny come in? Granny, are you here? All right. I'm gonna start. I'm gonna pray. Lord, I ask you to be with us today, to speak through me, to show us new things, new revelations, to show us what we need to see today in the book of Leviticus, chapter 14, where you talk about the defiling mold. I know you keep bringing that up to me over the years. And I know I've gotten stuff out of it, but I believe that there's more and that you keep bringing it up for a reason, Lord. So I just ask you to reveal new things, to open our eyes, to free us from any pain that we carry from past abuse, just dismantle all of the toxic ways that we were built up by the enemy, Lord, and rebuild us through your Spirit to look like we should look, to be who we should be, who you meant us to be, Lord. Give us new breath, free us from all the guilt and anger, fear, by revealing why they're there in the first place, Lord. I pray this in Jesus' name. Amen. All right. All right, so I'm going to go into Leviticus 14. I don't even know when God started bringing the scripture up to me, but somehow correlated with houses. Hey, Granny, I see you. So I want to say back in 2016, the end of 2016, I was living in a house and there was mold developing around the window frames. And we ended up leaving that home and actually moving to a new state. And then we were in this apartment, and due to a flood in the apartment and things not being properly checked, inspected, right? Mold ended up developing behind the baseboards and behind the walls. And so they had to gut like half the kitchen, take out the walls and put in new drywall and all that, right? I think that may have been when God started bringing up Leviticus 14. And at that time I was still drinking also. And so we ended up moving to another apartment, and I guess in like, I want to say in like 2021, 22, mold started to show up in that apartment. So we moved again, and I've been fighting the effects of the mold for the past year. I have candida overgrowth due to it. And so I started seeing a holistic person and went on a bunch of supplements, and it's gotten better, but it is not gone yet. And God had brought up again at this apartment now, defiling mold from Leviticus. And then during my last live, a woman showed up and she wanted to talk. And so I let her on as a guest, and she was telling parts of her story, and during her talking, I started to sense Jezebel's spirit, which is a very familiar spirit to me. And then afterwards, I believe it was confirmed that it was because I had wanted to give her one more shot, and I had messaged her and I said, honey, I just wanted you to know I'm still here if you ever do want to actually like talk about this, you know. I didn't say actually, but if you want to talk about this. And then she sent back like a novel of all of these shaming things. She was clearly trying to shame me, telling me what a horrible Christian I was. This is so typical of that spirit. And it just blows my mind. It doesn't matter how old you are. It doesn't matter if you're wealthy or if you're in poverty. The spirit always operates the same. It's about shaming and destroying another person. And so through those messages, I saw that that was the spirit that I was sensing throughout the live. And if you look back on the video, I watched part of it again to kind of refresh for today. I was pretty shook after that my voice was quivering and whatnot, right? And it's not, it wasn't an old, like, oh, I was scared or I felt bad or something. I think I was angry. I'm angry that the demonic can cause, influence somebody so much that they're willing to stay in their suffering and cause other people to suffer. I try to keep the person and the spirit separate, because really, I mean, at one point, even people suffering from demonic spirits, right? They at one point were just a hurt little child, and they just kind of, started to go with the flow of what made them feel better in the moment, which is usually always corrupt. And then as we walk in that, it just becomes stronger, right? And so really, it's kind of like these people are overpowered by these spirits, right? However, we have to make the choices to walk with these spirits, right? To be influenced, to act out in the way they want us to act out. At some point, we have to come to, like I did, a realization that my life was messed up. I was doing messed up things. I was hurting myself. I was hurting my child. And thankfully, I reached out to God, and He's been reversing that ever since, So we can't let people get away with how they treat us. We have to call out the truth, right? And then if they don't want to hear the truth or see the truth or work on things, then a lot of times we have to make those decisions to separate from those people. So anyway, that's where all this came from. Sorry, I don't know what just happened. So Leviticus 14 came up again in my mind. So I'm going to read that today. And it goes so well, I think, with, in the book, we were talking about Lance's story and how his dad was sexually abusing children while he was a missionary. And his wife knew about it, his son knew about it, the organization even knew about it, and everybody was hiding it and letting him continue to do work through this organization, and it spread, right? So whatever happened to this man that caused him to do that to children, right? More than likely he experienced the same at some point in his maybe childhood. He didn't deal with it, right? And nobody called him on it. And so it stayed in darkness, and it grew. And it spread to all these other children, right? And all of those other children will have it also spread and defile them, right? Defile them and have it spread, possibly, if they don't get help to work through what happened. And I think that's what Leviticus 14 is showing us, is that the sin that's done against us, right, is can defile us if we don't deal with it. And that's why we're talking about exposing the truth and talking about the abuse and allowing some people in so that they can help support us in talking these things out and finding ways to cope and being able to talk about that and allow God to heal it instead of being closed off and letting it fester like mold does behind walls, right? So the first part of Leviticus, it's talking about cleansing from defiling skin diseases. But if you go down to verse 33, that's where I'm going to start. It's cleansing from defiling molds. So the Lord said to Moses and Aaron, "When you enter the land of Canaan, which I am giving you as your possession, and I put a spreading mold in a house in the land, The owner of the house must go and tell the priest, I have seen something that looks like a defiling mold in my house. The priest is to order the house to be emptied before he goes in to examine the mold, so that nothing in the house will be pronounced unclean. After this, the priest is to go in and inspect the house. He is to examine the mold on the walls, and if it is greenish or reddish, if it has greenish or reddish depressions that appear to be deeper than the surface of the wall, the priest shall go out the doorway of the house and close it up for 7 days. On the 7th day, the priest shall return to inspect the mold. If the mold has spread on the walls, he is to order that the contaminated stones be torn out and thrown into an unclean place outside the town. He must have all the inside walls of the house scraped and the material that is scraped off dumped into an unclean place outside of town. Then they are to take the other stones to replace these and take new clay and plaster the house. If the defiling mold reappears in the house after the stones have been torn out and the house scraped and plastered, the priest is to go and examine it. And if the mold has spread in the house, it is a persistent, defiling mold. The house is unclean. It must be torn down, its stones, timbers, and all the plaster, and taken out of town to an unclean place. Anyone who goes into the house while it is closed up will be unclean until evening. Anyone who sleeps or eats in the house must wash their clothes. But if the priest comes to examine it and the mold has not spread after the house has been plastered, he shall pronounce the house clean, because the defiling mold is gone. To purify the house, he is to take 2 birds and some cedar wood, scarlet yarn, and hyssop. He shall kill one of the birds over fresh water in a clay pot. Then he is to take the cedar wood, the hyssop, the scarlet yarn, and the live bird, dip them into the blood of the dead bird and the fresh water, and sprinkle the house 7 times. He shall purify the house with the bird's blood, the fresh water, the live bird, the cedar wood, the hyssop, and the scarlet yarn. Then he is to release the live bird into the open fields outside the town. In this way, he will make atonement for the house, and it will be clean. These are the regulations for any defiling skin disease, for a sore, for defiling molds in fabric or in a house, and for a swelling, a rash, or a shiny spot, to determine when something is clean or unclean. So that's a lot. Like, I know, like, if we went into this and actually started to study all of those different pieces, I'm sure we would have so many revelations. However, I am not there right now. So some things that I had gotten out of this was, one, that mold, right? Okay, so people sin against us if not dealt with, becomes a defiling mold, right? So it's that sin, other sin, right? So all of that shame, that sadness, all that stuff like turns into depression and anger and numbing and all of that stuff, right? It's defiling us. Here, and so a mold, okay, not the mold in the walls, but a mold like we use, like ice cube trays, right? We mold water. That is something that came up, of course, when I was looking up mold this morning, but it kind of hit me with it's a hollow container used to give shape to molten or hot liquid material when it cools and hardens, okay? So it made me think about, like we're molded, right? And we were molded, at least in my past, right? I was molded by the enemy through all of this pain and abuse. And I think there comes a point where your heart starts to become hard, right? So we either come to Christ and we allow him to change us and remold us, right? Or we continue to walk with the enemy, and eventually, I've seen it, our hearts become hard and they get harder and harder. So essentially, the enemy is molding us with the things that we've gone through. The sin, like another person's sin, right, against us, defiles us. This definition of defile says the land was defiled by a previous owner. So like me, I was defiled by a previous owner, right? So like my parents owned their own sin. They owned their own pain that they chose to never deal with, right? And so that defiled me and spread to me because of the way then they treated me. And then I can, when that's undealt with, spread that to my daughter. And that's the generational patterns, right? Or curses that continue. So we continue to spread this mold or this sin to one another until somebody deals with it. Says in Matthew 15, those things which proceed out of the mouth come from the heart, and they defile a man. So the things in our heart come out through our mouths, through our actions, and that is what defiles us, right? And then starts to defile another person. Defiling is to corrupt the purity or perfection of something, a person. It violates us, makes us physically unclean, especially when with something unpleasant or contaminating. Sin violates the sanctity of and dishonors us. The verb defile has a number of uses that are all variations of the idea of making something unclean or impure. These meanings echo the words Middle English and Anglo-French ancestry, where defilement is connected to figurative and literal trampling. And I was talking about the pearls to swine, right? Don't give the good parts of yourself. Don't give up what God wants to give you for people who are going to be trampling on everything that's good about you, that are going to be trampling on everything about you, right? You don't want to give up everything that's yours or could be yours to swine who don't appreciate it and who don't even want it, right? Because, which means, all right, so the ultimate Anglo-French root is fuller or faller, to oppress, or literally to full, to trample underfoot. So all of this is, see, there's connections with everything we've been talking about. So this mold, the defiling, specifically defiling mold, and then defile, meaning to trample underfoot or to oppress. The story we read about Lance and his dad and how everybody was covering up everything for him, and that was spreading, right? That darkness was spreading to those children. So all of this is like, there's all these pieces starting to click and come together. That call we had with the girl the last time we had live, and her behavior. So yeah, so there's all these pieces, all these pieces. So yeah, the symbolic meaning in Leviticus 14 of the mold is, beyond the literal meaning of mold, it represents something that can spread and corrupt, affecting not just physical spaces, but also spiritual purity. So those are all notes that I got this morning while I was thinking about this. So now back to the scripture. So it talks about when you're entering the land of Canaan, right? Like that's I think of that like our promised land, right? It's everything that God has for us, right? As we're entering that, as we're walking with God and we're entering that promised land, that freedom that we are able to have with him. The owner of the house must go and tell the priest if they see a defiling mold in their house. So we need to go to God and be like, God, I see this in myself. Whatever that is, right? I see this in myself. You may not even understand why it's there or what it means, but you tell God, I see this in myself, okay? I'm going to the priest, Jesus, and I see this. And then he's going to examine it for you, right? He's going to examine it. He's going to see how deep it's gone within you. Maybe it's a sin that you're repeating from the past, like of your, generational stuff. Maybe your mom screamed and you scream now at your children, right? Maybe it's, you're repeating, saying mean things to people, and that's what you experience. So he's going to see how deep this is within you. He's going to then, so he's going to inspect the house. If the mold has spread, he's going to order that they're torn out and thrown into unclean places, right? So that's him breaking us apart. Kristen, I know you had mentioned this right in the beginning when we started talking about all this stuff, about him breaking us apart. And so he's going to tear down all of that mold, right? He's going to inspect it. He's going to show it. He's going to tear it out by helping us heal, right? By helping us to go into that. Why am I repeating that? Where did this begin? Where's the roots? So he's going to take all of this out, right? Get all that plaster and stones. He's going to scrape it clean, and he's going to remold it with new clay, new plaster, right? He's going to remold us. And then if the defiling mold reappears, he has to go examine it again. And if it's spread, it's a persistent defiling mold. So it makes me think like, we may think that we're healed of something. We may think that, something was completely taken care of. But then it starts to show itself again, right? So I try never to think, like I say, I was freed from the grip of the Jezebel spirit, right? I was freed from that guilt that I carried and stuff. I'm still going to be on guard against it, right? I'm going to watch that it doesn't start to show back up, because I don't want it. I don't think I'm exempt from it now. You know what I mean? I can still go back into that thinking and start to let those thoughts sit there and start to stew again and come up, and you still want to be on guard, right? So then he tears it down again and he rebuilds it again, right? He's talking about purifying the house with the bird's blood, right? We are purified by the blood of Christ now. So he is our priest. He comes, he examines things. We tell him, I see this within myself. I agree with you that there is something within me that should not be happening, that I should not be doing these things. He shows us this is where it stems from. He takes us into healing that piece so that we can be set free from that. And then he can rebuild us and remold us, right? Through his blood, right? Cleansing us. And through him remolding us as that potter, right? So, an example with my mom, that came up again. I think I had shared with you guys, there was a time where God had told me to go to her home, and she was on the porch alone at night, and she was talking about peace, and she was rocking, and she seemed so completely peaceful. And I saw in later days that she was starting to turn from her sin, right? She was holding back her anger. She had said she was so excited and proud of herself. She was holding back her anger. She was working on things, right, with God. And then at some point, something happened to where she started to revert back. So that's him re-examining, right? There's needing a re-examining because you're starting to go back to the same patterns. However, I believe at that point, she didn't want to go back to being re-examined. She wanted to go back into being who she was. And that is when things started to get worse. And then we had also, with that young lady last time, she had said she went to the church to get deliverance. And that type of deliverance where they just call out demons and you don't even know why they were there is not a healthy thing. I don't believe it is healthy because she seems to have gotten worse, right? She said at some point in there that things have gotten worse for her since that. I don't think she made that connection, but I made that connection. You went and got deliverance at a church and now your life is worse. Because if you don't understand why the demonic is able to be there influencing you, and you don't know what the root is, they don't have a reason to leave, okay? We have to understand why they're there. We have to understand why we're depressed. We have to understand why we're angry, right? We have to understand those things, because how are we gonna live a life of freedom, not being depressed or angry or feeling guilty if we don't know why it was there in the first place? So there's something with this. So God cleanses us, right? So I believe he cleansed my mom. He came and he was cleansing her. His blood was covering her. He was changing her. He was breaking her apart. And then something happened and she didn't want to go down that road anymore, and she reverted back. And so now she's in a pattern of that again. She's been for some years, and it's worse. That mold is defiling her, right? That pain that she's carried all these years is defiling her. And it was spread to her children. And we have to decide now as our own selves, right, that we want it to stop. We don't want it to spread any further in our lives. So that's where all of that went from that last live. I have felt completely different in the aspect of I like during the holidays, I normally felt a lot of guilt. I didn't feel any guilt. I still feel, sad for my family, and I'll pray for my family, but there's like a difference with it. Like, I guess like I don't feel like bad about it, like I'm the reason, right? Like there's something I could be doing that I'm not doing. So all of that's been lifted since all of that happened that last week we were talking. And I could see it, like my friend had pointed out, he said he could see in my videos just in my face. Like he's like, I could see something changed within you. And I was like, yeah, right? And I noticed as I've watched, put up clips of things and stuff, I'm like, wow, yeah, I could totally see there's that relief and that freedom that came with what God did, right? And so, yeah, the holidays were nice. I wasn't riddled with all that guilt and sadness and all that. So I was just able to just spend time with my family. Realized that I am getting too old to host. I did it 2 days in a row. I was so exhausted. I could not even open my eyes the day after Christmas. I was like trying to open my eyes to get up, and I'm like, I can't do it. I'm just, I'm not in that shape in my life. That's why you have children or you have younger siblings and they take over, because it's just too much. It's too much. Maybe one day I can do, but I cannot do both anymore. But yeah, other than that, everything was good. Everything's been good. I'm happy with everything, and all these pieces are clicking, coming together. So I'm excited to see if God reveals other things with the book of Leviticus and the remaining part of the book that we're going to go through. So I'm not quite sure I did look through the video real quick last night, the last one we did. So I know we did Lance's story, which is what I was talking about with the defiling mold, right? Like as that sin is hidden, it grows and festers, and it defiles us. It defiles other people, like it did with Lance's dad and the children that he was harming, and his wife and his son. And then we had talked about the little girl. Remember, I spent a lot of time at the end of the last live on this. These are the holes in our heart that the enemy has created through the pain, through other people's sin against us, and then maybe our sin then of repeating things. So we have all these holes, and that's what we want God. And this little girl and all her little wisdom knew that she needed these things healed so that the enemy couldn't use them against her anymore, and she could have that healed, so she would stop participating in what the enemy wanted her to do. So facing the brokenness and the reasons why, I think we had gone over this 2 reasons why we should look at our past. That there's people that say just let it go, it's in the past. That is not a good thing for us to do. We want to look at it. We want to allow God to take us into it, to heal it, right? It's not blame shifting when you are looking at these things and saying, hey, my mom did this and it hurt me. That's not blame shifting. That's calling out the truth, right? So don't feel like it's blame shifting. Some people say, why stir up the past? It can't be changed. Just focus on obedience to God in the present. How can you be obedient to God in the present if past pain is still holding you back, right? And how are you going to be remolded when you aren't being broken from the past molding that you experienced? He had talked about Philippians 3:13. How Christian leaders have even said that using the scripture that we should forget what lies behind and reach forward to what lies ahead. Such wholesome rejection of looking at the past abuse and brokenness is utterly misguided. The painful events of our past create deep-seated trauma, shame, and cognitive distortions that negatively shape the present until they are exposed and challenged. So facing the reality and impact of our past is implicit in Philippians 3:13. When Paul tells the Philippians that believers should forget what lies behind, he isn't saying we should simply put the past behind us, forget about it, and focus on the future. He can't be saying this because he said just a few verses earlier that he gave a detailed account of his past, including his previous abuse of Christians. It must be painful for Paul to reflect on the fact that in the past he had personally abused Christians, but he doesn't shrink back from such reflection and confession, right? So he thought about it, he shared it with others, he let God help him to deal with it, to help him to stop doing it, to heal from, what he had done to others. And then God was able to use him in the way that he was using him, right? Yes, the ingredients in Leviticus. Yes, I'm wondering about that too. Like, yes, the hyssop and the birds, and yes, I would love to study that too. Ooh, healing from mold exposure. Yeah. That's something to look into too. Now I thought, so like the holistic person I see, she's a Christian, right? And she had said, because it's been a year, I'm not on supplements currently because I'm not working right now, so I told her we're going to have to hold off, but I was taking them for a year and it has gotten better, but it has not gone away, right? And so she says a lot of times, like, if she's working with somebody and they're not getting better, she then determines she believes it's a spiritual thing, right? Which mine has been getting better, but then I thought, well, maybe like the release of the Jezebel spirit thing, like that maybe is why that's hanging on. But I can tell. The way I gauge it is my tongue. When you have overgrowth of candida, it shows up on your tongue as a white film. I'll show you guys. All the white on there, that's overgrowth, that's candida. However, it used to be really thick, and now it's a lot lighter than it was. And it did start to look, since the last week we were talking and I had all of that, healing done, it did look like it was starting to go away, and I was getting really excited. I was like, no way, was it because of that? But it's not completely gone, so I think I still have some more work to do. I don't know if getting the mold around the windows is a bad thing. I just kind of like freaked out about it. I mean, you shouldn't have any mold, I believe, in your home, right? You don't want mold. But the windows we had at that time, it was these really old wooden window frames, and they were real damp and moist. So those windows needed to be completely taken out and had new ones put in. It was just, they were so old. So yeah, I mean, I would say that you don't want mold in your home at all, but on the seals, I have some mold right now on the seals. It's because, I mean, it does get damp around the mold, or around the windows. That I just, like, I'll clean off with, like, vinegar or something. My thing is just because, it does get moist around, especially around the windows are warm. You say our house is warm, it's really cold outside. We crack our windows open, that creates some, freezing, and then it melts. So, it's probably good for us to wipe up all the damp, wet stuff around our windows often. But I personally would not worry so much about it being on the window seals and then I just clean it off. It's like it was literally in the frame and in the walls at that other place. So when it's, there, it can grow because it's in those damp places. Yeah, you use vinegar too. Good. So I don't know. But the candida too, I was supposed to, there's a candida diet. It's like, no dairy, no carbs, it's like basically might as well be on the Daniel fast all the time. And I have not been following that. So I have not been working with her, right? So she had said, well, the supplements, she's worked with people before, right, with the candida. She's like, the people that cooperate and do the diet along with the supplements overcome it a lot faster than people who are only doing the supplements, which is what I was doing, right? So if I worked with her and the supplements that I was on, I may be completely fine with it now, but because I was not cooperating and I wasn't doing the diet, I mean, I did make some changes, but I was not fully following the diet, then I'm still dealing with this, right? That just made me think about like God too, like in our healing process and stuff. Like if we're not going to work with him, right, we're not going to be healed like we could be. He needs our cooperation, right? We need to go and walk with him in healing things, right? Cooperation's a good thing. So like Paul, we want to face things. We want to confess the things that we have done, the things that we are currently doing. We want to point out things that we see, like in Leviticus. I see this thing within me. I want it changed, So a lot of coming in agreement with the truth and bringing it to God, confessing, allowing God to show us and heal us and be able to then use us, right? Like he uses Paul. So facing the reality and impact of our past is very important. So I think he gives us the 4 main reasons why we should face it. I'm pretty sure we've probably gone over a couple of these a couple times because we tend to keep getting sidetracked on a different parts of discussion. But it's okay. Repeating's good, right? It'll just stay in our brains and penetrate our hearts further. So the first one he mentions is a way to express faith. So facing our brokenness is a breathtaking act of faith in the living God. Refusal to face our brokenness is a tragic denial of his existence, power, and goodness. Because the denial of painful reality comes so naturally, it is rarely labeled as sinful. Nor do we recognize how much it dishonors God who loves us. The Bible says that God is a God of truth, John 14:6. God is the Lord of history who will ultimately triumph over all human evil, 1 Corinthians 15 and Revelation 20. Scripture declares that nothing, no natural disaster, no abuse or demonic powers can separate us from his love. He will always love us, right? So even demonic powers, that can't separate us from his love. So like even for my mom, his love is still there for her. She has to want it, right? So that's the difference. Yes, God's love is always there for us. Nothing can separate us from his love. He died for the whole world, right? The whole sinful world. However, we still have to come and want it. We still have to come and seek it. We have to seek him, right? And receive and accept his love. Thus, refusal to face the truth about our brokenness is no trivial matter. Dan Allender puts it like this: denial is an affront to God. It assumes that a false reality is better than the truth. It assumes that God is neither good nor strong enough to help us during the recall process. Ultimately, the choice to face past abuse memories is the choice not to live a lie. So what we're doing by saying, I want you, God, to heal me. I want you to walk this out with me. I want you to go with me into remembering things, into connecting the feelings that I'm still having to the actual event that took place that caused them. We are telling him, I'm choosing to not live in a lie, right? I want to live in the truth. I want to live in freedom. So stated positively, as we refuse to deaden ourselves to the truth, right? To deny and become numb. We're refusing to do that. So as we refuse to deaden ourselves to the truth and to the pain of our past abuse, we throw ourselves into the arms of the only one who can heal us. This is why Jesus pronounces a blessing on those who are willing to mourn. We did talk about mourning for sure. They are the ones who will experience divine comfort. So as we cry, as we are in his arms, allowing him to comfort us and take us into this, and we mourn and we grieve the things that we've gone through, we receive that divine comfort, which I had shared, I realized I was receiving and didn't really understand what it was, but it's that kind of like, that just this, it's like that, that peace that I'm grieving and mourning, I'm feeling pain, I'm kind of like a suffering I'm going through, right? But then there's this peace and this comfort that's coming out of nowhere, right? That's what we receive when we trust God in healing our hurts. Over and over again, the psalmist admonishes us to cry out to the Lord in our brokenness so that we can taste God's power and beauty. The Lord is near to the brokenhearted and saves those who are crushed in spirit. Psalms 34:18. The poor man cried, and the Lord heard him and saved him out of all of his troubles, right? So the Lord hears us, and he will save us out of all of it as we cooperate with him, right? Turn to me and be gracious to me, for I am lonely and afflicted. The troubles of my heart are enlarged. How long shall I take counsel in my soul, having sorrow in my heart all the day? But I have trusted in your loving kindness. I will sing to the Lord, because he has dealt bountifully with me. God is my helper. The Lord is the sustainer of my soul. He will recompense the evil to my foes. As we are willing to face and taste our brokenness, we will be able to taste God's sustaining power. And then the second part of why we should face things is it's a way to live in the truth. Facing our brokenness forces us to live in the truth. and helps us to identify and extinguish the destructive lies created by the shame of our abuse. A thing that just came to my mind was how I was saying it's hard to face the truth of like what somebody who you love, who is supposed to love you, has done, right? And sometimes I think like, I've thought like, oh, I was slow in coming to that truth and seeing that, right? Like, it's like that you have to see or know something, and then at some point it becomes like more clear to you. I don't think it's that like we're holding ourselves back and that like, oh, well, I should have seen all this a long time ago. I believe it's because, you know, if we saw everything all at once, if I saw that reality that this person who is supposed to love me actually participated in destroying me, if I saw that truth all at once, it may have been very crippling, right? So I believe that God allows us to have, like, he knows how to do it, right? He allows us to have partial realization of things, right? And then he'll make it a little more, he'll bring us into it a little more, right? And we'll see it a little more clear until we finally see the fullness of it. But at that point, when we see the fullness of the truth, we've already slowly come into seeing it, you know? So it's not going to cripple us because he knows how to bring it about. Thus, looking at our painful past is necessary for correcting the distorting effects of shame. Those negative parts of the self that remain totally hidden will remain totally shame-based. So if the negative parts of our self or our past, the stuff we went through, remains totally hidden, then it's going to remain shame-based, right? So it's going to create a lot of shame within us. Darkness produces good mushrooms, again with the mold, right? Mold grows in the darkness. So also mushrooms grow in the darkness and they produce, darkness produces good mushrooms but not good flowers, right? In particular, the vast majority of abuse victims inappropriately blame themselves for the abuse, which in turn creates numerous emotional and relational problems. The dynamic often begins in childhood, for abused children are dependent on their parents and long for a close relationship with them. So they instinctively minimize and take responsibility for the evil of the abusive parents. The lie that the child is responsible for the abuse is perpetually reinforced by the abusive parents' blame shifting. This destructive distortion of reality continues on into adulthood. Thus, I often hear adult survivors of childhood abuse make statements such as, my father didn't really molest me, he just touched me, so we minimize, right? Overall, my parents took pretty good care of me because, you know, they provided clothes and a roof over my head. I had food to eat. So that's a big one I had noticed in past relationships, right? They were all bad relationships because I was drawn to unhealthy men. So you take that, you know, those couple of good things that they've done for you and you blow them up, right? And you take all the horrible things that they've done to you and you minimize them, right? So you reverse so that you can stay in that denial and not have to face the truth. No wonder my parents got angry with me. I was a hard child to raise. No, there's no excuse for a parent who deals with you in an angry way. They should still be dealing, even if a child does have some issues to where they're hard to deal with, it doesn't give a parent right to abuse them, right? These self-protective statements serve to lessen the painful acknowledgement that their parents did not love them as they should have. They also serve to perpetuate. I was just thinking, we're talking about how it's hard to come into the truth that our parents hurt us, right? And it was talking about not coming into that truth keeps us away from God, right? Like away from that fullness of God. And having that close relationship with God, because we're holding on to a false truth that we've created, right, about our parents, because we don't want to deal with all of the pain. And so that keeps us away from that. But if we would just, because yes, it's painful seeing if your parents did not love you and treat you like they should have, right? However, if we come into that realization, if we allow God to slowly bring us into that realization and we can let go of all the pain and stuff, we actually come into that fullness of God as the Father, right? So we receive everything we wanted through seeing God as the Father and coming into that relationship with Him as Him being our dad and we're His daughters. And so it just came to mind again, like we don't want anything, sin, other people's or ours, and the pain and all of that. We don't want to hold on to that so we can be in this state of denial over what our parents, did, because that's going to hold us back from that fullness of our Father, right? He can replace, do you understand what I'm saying? He can replace what we thought we should have gotten from our parents. He can give that to us. He can give us what we thought or wanted from our actual parents on earth as we deal with all of this. Okay, good. So the self-protective statements serve to lessen the painful acknowledgement that their parents did not love them as they should have. They also serve to perpetuate destructive shame by minimizing the reality of their parents' evil behavior and by shifting responsibility for it. God calls us to walk in truth as we face the reality of our brokenness. We can begin to embrace the truth and reject the lies. All right, I think that's where we've stopped multiple times. I'm going to stop there again. I am going to put a note right next to this one so we know where to start, because I want to read again. It's old in my mind again. And we don't lose our place. I have it marked. So tomorrow is New Year's, right? So are you guys available tomorrow? Do you want to? I'm totally fine to meet tomorrow. I don't do anything for New Year's. I like New Year's Eve. So what I've been doing, I want to say since like 2017, I asked God for a word for the year. And last year was be still and know, right? And so what I do now, like tonight, is I keep a journal for that word or phrase that He gives me, right? And I jot down throughout the year things that go with that or situations. So I am going to go through that tonight and reminisce, right? And see how that word actually unfolded in my life throughout the year. I did ask him for my word for 2025. I think I know what the word is, but I asked them to confirm it. So then I'll start a new notebook for 2025, and I will make journal notes to do with that word. I'll let you know once it's confirmed. But yeah, that's what I do on New Year's. I just spend time with God. I reminisce about the last year and all the ways that He's helped me throughout the year. To this year, there was two major things: my job that I left, and the separation from my family. Those were two very major things where I definitely had to be still, right, and know that He is God as I was doing those things, making those decisions, trusting that I was making the right decisions and that He's got, the plan for, like, especially my career. So yeah, that's what I do on New Year's Eve. And then New Year's Day, we don't do anything. We just hang out, watch movies, eat something good, like out of the norm. So, sorry, did I miss anything? Are you good to meet tomorrow? Or do you guys want to hold off tomorrow? I don't know if you do things with family. You're good for tomorrow? How about you, Granny? Are you busy tomorrow morning? Okay, cool. So then we'll meet tomorrow morning. If you don't mind, before you leave, my sister, had gotten me that microphone, and we had been trying to test it out. I was at my daughter Heaven got her hair dyed blue, purple, and pink at my sister's salon. So while we were there, I had gone live and put the microphone up, and Kristen was on for a minute and said it was echoing, which I did. I looked at the live replay and I heard it was echoing, but I don't know if it's because it was the room we were in, or if it's because I had the microphone kind of like away from us, or because we had music playing. So I just kind of want to test it out. So if you guys don't mind, I'm going to put it on, and then you guys can let me know like how it sounds, and I'm going to put some music on. We'll see if it echoes still. Can you guys hear me? Can you guys hear me? I've got both of them on. It's not muted. You can hear me? Okay. Does it sound okay? Is it echoing at all? Can you hear it rubbing against my clothing at all? Sorry, I know I asked lots of questions. So is it echoing? Can you hear it rubbing on my clothes? I know, and I cannot stand. It sounds fine. Okay. Um, on these lives, there's such a delay. Like if I ask you a question, it takes a minute for the answer to come through. It's wretched. All right, I'm gonna put some music on, and then we'll see if it echoes. Can you guys hear the music? And let me know if it's echoing now because of that. No echo. Cool. So I wonder if maybe it was because I had the microphone hanging from like a wire on her shelf. Maybe I needed it actually close to me. Music's very faint. Is that better? That's probably as loud as I would have it while I'm talking. I wonder too. All right, so there's this see, you know what? You know how things don't come with manuals anymore? So like I can't even like I don't know how to work this thing exactly, but there's this had like a tiny manual. So it said like there's this exactly, but there's this had like a tiny manual. So it said like there's this the setting that you put on, which I have on right now for background noise. So we thought maybe you wouldn't be able to hear the music, but you can. So maybe it's for like if I have the garage door open and cars are going by or something. I'm going to turn it off and see what that does. All right, so I turned off that setting. Does it sound different at all now? Yeah, it'd be nice if they would still give manuals for things. Usually you can see it online. So would you say it's better one way or another, or it's the same both ways? I'm going to be able to actually hear it too when I download this. All right, cool. Great. Thanks for helping, guys. So I'm thinking maybe that settings for like, you know, outside noise or something. I'm moving on up. Yeah, I never even thought of getting a microphone for it. So, how was your Christmas, Granny? I think Kristen said hers was good. Mine was good, other than tiring. Too much cooking. I didn't even get to make my butter cookies. I was like, I can't do anymore. I'm too exhausted. So I actually want to do that now. I haven't had butter cookies in a long time. It was blessed. Good. Good. Yeah. Good. So never know. I might pop on tonight. Depends on how things are going, my time with God. Last year I came on for a little while, just listened to some worship music. Talked a little bit with whoever came on.
Yeah, I don't want to commit, because if I'm having really good like alone time with God, then I don't want to, not come on if I said I would. So if I do happen to come on, I'll send you guys a notice, and if you're available, you can hop on and we can hang out. Um, but yeah, I'm gonna have a nice, quiet evening with God. My daughter and her husband are going out to a friend's house, so it'll just be me and Jack. And Jack's been doing good, so that's good. We're all recovered and recuperated from all that with him being sick. All right, I'm gonna pray, and then we can see each other tomorrow morning. And I will not be up till midnight, I'm sure, because I don't do the whole midnight thing anymore. God, thank you for this time together this morning. Um, Thank you for bringing up all the different pieces that we've been talking about with like the demonic and the sin and defiling mold or defiling sin. And I asked you to just keep revealing things to us through your word, maybe even specifically Leviticus 14, if we feel led to study that. Um, I ask you, God, to help us to just bring some things to mind tonight of what's happened over this past year in our lives. Help us remember all of the moments with you where you have shown yourself, where you have maybe healed us, where you have helped us to overcome things. Um, I ask you again to bring a word or a phrase to me for 2025, Lord, to confirm the word or phrase. If anybody wants to join, that you bring the word to them, and that we can live out that word, and help us to be able to see all the moments that go along with what that message is that you're giving us for 2025, Lord. And I thank you that we don't have to wait until one time each year to have um, to make what are those resolutions, right? New Year's resolutions. We don't have to wait and do that once a year and come up with all of these high goals that we want to attain for the new year. We can do that every single day with you, that your mercies are new every day, that life is new every day with you, Lord. And so I thank you that, yes, we do not have to participate in the world's way of putting all of this pressure on ourselves and setting ourselves up for possible failure, but that we can just walk this out with you, and every moment of every day we can have new things happen, that we can set new goals as we walk with you throughout the year. um, so again, God, I thank you for your ways. I thank you for exposing the ways of the world that harm us. And I just ask you to continue into the new year to show us the things we need to see, to heal us, to bring us freedom, to bring us new purpose, like you did with all of your apostles and your disciples, of using us in other people's lives to be able to share your love with others and be able to help others to find the freedom that we have found, Lord. And I thank you for new friendships, and I look forward to the coming year with you. In Jesus' name, amen. And before I forget, just in case TikTok ends up being taken, if you're not subscribed to my YouTube, that's probably where I'll end up being. It is as of right now, that's where I'll go. I'm on there now. I've started putting up all these videos. The link is on my TikTok page. So you just go. I think that's the only link I have is for YouTube. So go ahead and subscribe there if you haven't. That's where you'll find me if TikTok disappears. I think I can go live even from YouTube without having a certain amount of followers. I don't know how strict they are with things. So far, I haven't gotten any violations with any of the videos I've put up. So that's a good sign that we can at least talk about the things we have. So yeah, that's where I will be. God bless your new year too, you guys. Happy New Year's Eve. All right, so if I come on later tonight, I will let you guys know. Other than that, I will see you tomorrow morning. All right. Bye.